First prize goes to entry number 12.
There must be some mistake.
Read the bottom.
2. Judging shall be blind by number before 3 judges of the society's appointing. 3. The decision of the judges shall be final. 3 rules, plainly printed. Everybody in Delaney County, Nebraska, could have recited them. There was a 4th rule. It was not printed anywhere, and it had never been voted on, and nobody would have admitted to it under oath. It was this, that a woman who sold pies for money was not, properly speaking, a lady competitor, and would not be taking a blue ribbon out of that tent while Mrs. Verena Pomeroy chaired the Domestic Arts Committee. Etta Kimball had lost to that rule twice. The 3rd year, she came with a wax pencil. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, a county judge was going to stand up in front of 1,100 people at the Delaney County Fair and resign from the Agricultural Society over a pie. It would cost him a great deal more than anybody watching understood at the time. He would do it anyway, and he would not make a speech about it. And 8 months later, he would marry the woman it was about, who made him wait and made him prove it, and was not in the least interested in being anybody's right or wrong. But all of that started with a trestle table in a canvas tent and 26 numbered pies, and one of them with something written on the bottom of the tin. The premium was $25 and a blue ribbon. $25 in 1889 in Delaney County was a serious sum, better than a month of most men's wages. But the ribbon was worth more, and everybody who mattered knew it because the ribbon was advertising. A blue ribbon at the county fair meant a woman could say Premium Baker, Delaney County Fair on a car at the depot, and could charge 15 cents for a pie instead of 10, and people would pay it and feel they'd done well. For most of the women in that tent, it was a matter of pride. For exactly one of them, it was a business. Etta Kimball was 33 years old and had been a widow for 4 of them. Her husband had left her 80 acres of ground that were, in her own flat assessment, adequate to disappoint a better farmer than me. What kept that place was the pies. She baked 4 days a week and met the through trains of the Delaney Depot with a basket, and the train men knew her, and the westbound conductor had been known to hold 30 seconds for her on a bag crossing. She was dry, plain-spoken, and entirely without illusions. She had also, 3 years running, baked the best pie in Delaney County. She had placed 5th, then 4th. Mrs. Verena Pomeroy had chaired the Domestic Arts Committee for 9 years, and did not consider herself a dishonest woman. She considered herself a woman with a standard. The society's premiums, in her view, existed to encourage the domestic accomplishments of the ladies of the county. A person who baked for trade, who did it all week for money in quantity, was not competing on the same footing, and there was no rule about it because no rule ought to be necessary among people who understood things. She had said as much once at her own table, and it had gotten around. So Etta Kimball had been placed 5th the first year and 4th the second, in a tent where everybody who tasted knew better and had said nothing at all about it either time. The 3rd year, she went into Pruitt's store and bought a wax pencil for 4 cents. Judge Warren Teague was 44 years old and was widely considered the dullest reliable man in the county. He had held the county bench 11 years. He was a bachelor. He was punctual, unexcitable, fair to a fault, and had never in his life said an interesting thing at a dinner party. The society asked him to judge the baking premium every year because a judge on the panel lent the thing tone, and because he could be relied upon not to be difficult. What nobody in Delaney County knew about Judge Warren Teague was that for 2 years he had walked down to the depot on Tuesday afternoons, when the westbound came through, and bought a pie from the Kimball basket. Every Tuesday, 2 years, he had, in that time, managed perhaps 40 words of conversation with her, most of them about weather. The judging happened at 11 in the morning in the domestic arts tent, and it was blind and it was honest because the judges were honest. 26 pies on a trestle table, each with a numbered card. No names. 3 judges. Teague, the Methodist minister, and a seed company man from Lincoln who had judged fairs for 20 years and had opinions about crust. They worked down the table with small forks. At entry 14, Judge Teague stopped. He put down his fork and looked at the pie for a moment, and then wrote first on his card without any hesitation at all. And he knew, with the complete certainty of a man who has eaten one of those every Tuesday for 2 years, exactly whose it was. The seed man ranked 14 first as well. The minister ranked at second. The cards went to the committee for tally, as the rules required. Mrs. Verena Pomeroy had the cards, the tags, and the entry register in a canvas tent by herself for about 10 minutes. That is all it takes. Nobody watched her do it, and nobody ever proved precisely what she did. And it does not particularly matter, because the arithmetic afterwards spoke for itself. Her daughter Corley, 19, had entered a perfectly respectable apple pie and expected nothing from it. Corley liked baking, was decent at it, and had entered because her mother had entered her. She was, at that moment, over at the poultry sheds looking at bantams, and had no idea of any of it. That will matter later. The premiums were announced in the grandstand at 3, in front of 1,100 people, because the fair announced everything from a grandstand. Butter first, preserves, bread, then the baking premium. First premium, $25 in the blue ribbon. Entry number 14, Miss Corley Pomeroy. There was applause. Corley Pomeroy, hauled up from the poultry sheds and pushed forward by her mother, went scarlet and looked genuinely astonished, which is a thing several people remembered afterward. Fourth premium, $2. Entry number 22, Mrs. E. Kimball. Etta Kimball, standing at the rail with her basket over her arm, did not move a muscle in her face. And 40 feet away, Judge Warren Teague stood up. He did not shout. He never shouted. Mr. President, I'm obliged to say that there's an error. Warner Pomeroy, president of society in a good hat, said pleasantly that these things happened and could be seen to afterward. It can't be seen to afterward, sir, because the ribbon's been given. Teague's voice carried, in the flat, unhurried way it carried in courtroom. I ranked entry 14 first. So did Mr. Gaines. And entry 14 was not Miss Pomeroy's pie. A ripple went through 1,100 people. I'd asked the committee to produce the judges' cards. And Mrs. Verena Pomeroy, at the front of the grandstand platform, said, with real regret and quite loudly, that the cards appeared to have been mislaid in confusion, but that the register was perfectly clear, and here it was. Entry 14. Pomeroy, see, in fresh ink. That was very nearly the end of it, and this is the part of the story that gets left out when people tell it now. He lost. For about 90 seconds, Judge Warren Teague lost that argument in front of the entire county, because the register said what it said, and the cards were gone, and the only thing on the other side was one man's word. And the crowd's mood was already turning, not against the Pomeroys, but against him, in the specific way a crowd turns against a dignified man who is making a scene about a pie. Somebody laughed. Warner Pomeroy said, kindly and audibly, that perhaps the judge had better sit down. And Teague stood there with nothing at all. Etta Kimball had not said one word. She had been standing at the rail with her basket over her arm to the whole of it, and she had watched a man she had exchanged 40 words with over 2 years wreck himself in public on her behalf, and she had let him get all the way to the bottom of it before she moved. Then she set her basket down and walked up onto the grandstand platform and went past Mrs. Pomeroy to the table where the winning pie was sitting under its blue ribbon. She picked it up. She held up over her head so that 1,100 people could see the underside of the tin, and Etta Kimball said, in a voice that did not need any help carrying, turn the tin over. There was, on the bottom of that pie tin, written in wax pencil in a plain hand, 14 E. Kimball. It had been written a fortnight before the fair, at a kitchen table on 80 indifferent acres, by a woman who had lost twice and had a very clear idea of how. She turned it slowly so the whole grandstand got a look. I bought the pencil at Pruitt's for 4 cents, she said. I marked every tin I own. I've been doing it since June. She set the pie back down on the table. Number 14 is mine. It has been all afternoon. And Delaney County, Nebraska, 1,100 people at fair, made a sound as described by 3 separate people who were there as like a barn going over. Corley Pomeroy got to the table before anybody else did. She was 19, and she had been standing on that platform for 4 minutes, holding a ribbon she had just worked out she had not won, and her face was a wreck. She took the blue ribbon off the entry card with shaking hands, and she carried it across the platform, and she put it into Etta Kimball's hands in front of the entire county. I didn't know, she said. Mrs. Kimball, I promise you I didn't know. I know you didn't, said Etta. That is an exchange that got repeated in Delaney County for 30 years. And it is the reason Verena Pomeroy's daughter came out that afternoon better thought of than any other person on platform, including the judge. Judge Warren Teague did not gloat, and he did not press it. He waited until the noise had come down, and then he asked the president for the floor, and he got it because at that point nobody was going to refuse him for sentences. People wrote them down. I've judged this premium 7 years, and I've never had cause to doubt a tally before this afternoon. I ranked entry 14 first, and the register says otherwise, and the cards that would settle are gone. I don't propose to sit on a board that keeps its books that way. He set his badge of office for the society down on the table beside the pie. I resigned from the Agricultural Society, effective now. Good afternoon. Then he got down off the grandstand and walked out through 1,100 people, and did not say another word to anybody that day. It cost him. That is the part the story usually skips, and it shouldn't, because it is a whole measure of the man. Warner Pomeroy was president of the Agricultural Society, but more importantly, he was on the Delaney County Central Committee, and the Central Committee decided who got renominated for the county bench. Warren Teague had held that bench for 11 years and had expected to hold it for 20. He was not renominated the following spring. He lost it, a judgeship, a career, and about $600 a year, over a pie contest, and he never once, in the whole of the rest of his life, described it as a sacrifice or allowed anybody else to. When people brought it up, he would say that a man who won't stand up over a small, dishonest thing has no business claiming he'd stand up over a large one, and then he would change the subject. He came to the depot the following Tuesday, as usual, which took a certain amount of nerve. Etta Kimball sold him a pie for 10 cents, as usual. Then she said, Judge, I'd like to say something, and I'd like to only say it once. Ma'am, I'm obliged to you, genuinely, but I'll not be married as a correction. She looked at him levelly over the basket. You did a right thing in public, and it cost you your seat, and half this county is telling itself a story about the two of us that ends in a wedding. I'll not be the tidy finish to another person's fine gesture. Warren Teague considered that for a while, which was his way. That's fair, he said. And then he said the thing that undid her, entirely by accident, because Warren Teague could not be charming on purpose if you paid him. But I'd point out, Mrs. Kimball, that I've bought a pie from this basket every Tuesday for 2 years. He put his hat back on. I'd have known number 14 blindfolded, in the dark, at 100 yards. That wasn't judgment on the platform. That was arithmetic I'd already done. He touched his hat. I'll be here next Tuesday. That's all I meant by it. And he walked back up the platform, and Etta Kimball stood there with a basket on her arm, and did the only piece of mental arithmetic that had ever caught her genuinely off guard, which was 2 years of Tuesdays at 10 cents, by a man who had never once managed a whole sentence about anything but weather. He came the next Tuesday, and the one after. He came all that autumn and all that winter, and bought a pie he frequently did not eat, and gradually got up to about 200 words a visit. By February, they were arguing about politics on the depot platform in the cold, which Etta enjoyed enormously and told nobody about. In April, he lost the nomination. In May, she asked him, because she was not a woman who waited to be asked, and because she had watched him take it without one word complaint, whether he had any intention of proposing or whether she was to go on selling him pies until one of them died. Warren Teague said he'd been building up to it since about October. She said that was the slowest thing she'd ever heard of, and yes. They were married in the June. The scandal, as scandals do, was extremely good for business. The story went up and down that rail line with the trainmen, and by the following summer Etta Teague was baking 6 days a week and had 2 women helping her. Corley Pomeroy was one of them, which her mother never quite recovered from. Corley was a partner in it by 1893 and ran the depot into the business for 20 years. And the 2 women got on famously, a fact that Delaney County found more shocking than anything that had happened on the grandstand. Verena Pomeroy went on chairing the Domestic Arts Committee for another 6 years, because nobody moved to remove her. She simply chaired it in a county that had watched her, once, on a platform, in front of 1,100 people. That was sufficient. There's a small last thing, and it is the only part of this business the Delaney County Agricultural Society has ever been formally embarrassed about. At the next annual meeting, somebody moved that entry number 14 be retired from the baking premium. It carried, apparently unanimously, and it is in the minute book, and it is the only retired number in the history of that fair. Nobody has ever bothered to explain it to a newcomer. The entries just run 13, then 15, and if you ask why, whoever you've asked will look at you and say, "Oh, that's the Kimball number," as though that settles it. It does out there. And in a kitchen drawer on a farm outside Delaney, for 41 years, alongside the string and the spare hinges and the things a household keeps for no reason, there was a wax pencil worn down to about an inch that had cost 4 cents at Pruitt's store in the June of 1889. Nobody was ever allowed to throw it out.